and play with your friends. You can't do anything in this game with anybody. There's no reason that this just costs more money. According to code, this game is fine, by the way, chat. Fine is, yeah, I think the game is fine also. It's a 6. Yeah, it's fine. Great, wow. Imagine spending $500 million, 300.
And it's time for Lefties Losing It. And how do we get this deep into the week without some input from the ladies of The View? And these miserable maidens are losing their teeny tiny minds again about Joe Biden.
He's 83, so he's a little stumbly, he's a little rumbly. I can't point to anything that he's done that he did.
No,
as president, but I want somebody to tell me, well, when did you know it was bad? If you knew, why did you wait?
Yeah.
So
Can I get in
He
for a
said
second?
that it was after he moderated the debate.
Yes, but that's not, I'm sorry, baby. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you're telling me that hundreds of people knew that he was not able to do his job, then where the hell was everybody?
Hundreds of people, Whoopi, hundreds of millions of
hero.
people around
Or
the world who
villain.
don't
I'm
get
not
their news
judging.
from leftist lies like you knew about Joe
Eve from
Biden's
Don
cognitive
Juan.
decline. They knew it was
Okay.
real and made him unfit for office. I've been covering it on this station for more than 5 years. Let's just have around 20 seconds of President Applesauce.
Putin's kleptocracy. Yeah. America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. You put him, the idea that
You know my legacy, but
Los
this
Angeles
is a
and,
whole new
and,
chapter.
what am I doing here?
I don't know
30
what you were
seconds
doing
before
there.
you
I don't know
attack.
how Whoopi
Get ready.
missed all that. It was only around a week ago when Joe Biden and Chief
I've
Elder
never seen a
Abuse
cheese
Jill
so perfectly
were on
aligned,
The View
Adam.
to
It
try
takes
to
great
dispel
effort
any
to keep my
notions of
cosmic
his
energy
feeble
in
mental
balance.
state.
When you start to lose
did not go
focus,
well.
what do you do to recalibrate?
I meditate.
And when that doesn't work, I watch
How do you lead the world without How do you lead the world
Battle
without
starts in 5,
So
4,
we can hardly
3,
expect any level of
2,
integrity
1.
or consistency
All
from
you
the
need to do
ladies
is
of The
capture the
View.
mission area.
And let's
Got it?
stay on Whoopi Goldberg, because remember when she said this before the election, disputing the notion that Donald Trump and the Republicans were pro-family.
Here comes
Really pisses me off about this.
it's torture.
Yep, she's demanding tax credits, but now that the Trump administration is coming through with
I rise in
some
the name of
relief,
Quinlan.
she ain't happy.
So as birth rates continue to
Capture
decline,
the mission area!
the White House is looking to offer $5,000 cash bonuses, expanded access to IVF, along with other incentives for women to have more babies.
So long.
I am incredibly insulted by this because clearly they don't know how women's bodies work.
She's so insufferable, isn't she? And yes, no wonder it's Republicans who don't know how women's bodies work. Your ilk who claim women can have penises and men can breastfeed. It's interesting that you are insulted, you are enraged by the very tax credits you are demanding. Now she's mocking the $5,000 benefit because that's nothing. Well, it's
Your
not going to
team's
cover
capture
lunch.
progress has passed the halfway point.
And it's not even $5,000 because you have to cut it in half because you got to pay taxes. So they're offering you $2,500.
I rise in the name of Quinlan.
They're just the worst, aren't they? Talking about miserable maidens, here is Hillary Clinton being Hillary Clinton, i.e.
You're at last.
Disappear!
Handmaidens for the patriarchy. Republican women, except for someone like Liz Cheney, someone as awful as Hillary. You know, it's a little
You'll have to
bit
keep fighting
for
until
a
we have a
woman
winner.
who allow herself to be repeatedly humiliated over and over again,
You'll
over and
fall
over
long
again
before I
with
do.
Bill Clinton's wild philandering, affair after affair, Monica, Paula, Jennifer, Kathleen, the list goes on. And I'm not even touching on his association with Jeffrey Epstein. Never forget that this was the painting in prime position in Jeffrey Epstein's house. And through all of
I'm
that
the sworn protector of
humiliation,
Quinlan.
Hillary stood
Who are
by
you?
her philandering man. Want to talk about a handmaiden for the patriarchy? Look in the mirror, love. Now let's go to Colorado and check in with how
30
the
seconds before you
Democrats are
attack.
faring.
Get
This
ready.
is Colorado State Senator Chris Kolka, who says
thought you were
he is
goner after the
accountable to
vampires caught us
God,
by the Queensboro
and that's
Bridge.
why he's
Oh, me
standing
too.
up for
You'll never
equality
guess who showed up to save
and
the day.
trans Jesus.
Morbius.
Trans
No
what?
way.
Things got weirder from there. I'll tell you about it sometime.
For equality.
The battle starts in 5,
I might be standing
4,
for dreams.
3, 2, 1. All you need to do is capture the mission area. Got it?
Even immortal
And I
weapons need a
believe
little
that
help now and then.
Jesus, God, will look at me and say, you stood up for people.
Now to Jake Tapper's new
here they are
book,
now.
Original Sin on President Biden's decline and his covered up by the likes of Jake Tapper. We haven't forgotten Jake, but he's on the book tour and his fellow lefties are treating these revelations on Biden's decline like it's
Looks like the mission area is yours to capture now.
something that's on the right for some time is the Biden family's dodgy business dealings involving Hunter Biden.
Capture the mission area.
Influence extended to the global office. Indeed, was America being unleashed led by this guy?
It's the 10 crack commandments. Follow these rules, you'll have mad bread to break up. If not, 24 years on the wake up.
Good Lord, let's hear what CNN anchor Jake Tapper has to say.
How big a factor was the Hunter stuff?
I think it was considerable. I think Hunter was driving the decision making for the family in a way that people. He was almost like a chief of staff of the
Does
family.
that strike you as pretty bizarre?
It's bizarre because I think he was
Why would I need
demonstrably
healing?
unethical, sleazy,
This is the
and
place to
prone
watch.
to horrible decisions.
Don't mess with the amazing Spider-Man!
After his brother died, he cheated on his wife with his brother's widow and then got raped by a friend.
Just the beginners joining now to more on this is filmmaker Armin Holland. Running the country. Was it Jill? Was it Hunter? Or in this fine was it these faceless men and women who enjoy strips?
Keep your eyes on Slide that soul.
Born again!
Control C. Get it, Spider. Slide that soul.
Constitutional powers given to the president are given to only
Ready.
one
Place to
person,
pick on the bad
the
guys.
president. The president himself can't even delegate to other
Slide
people
that
if he
soul.
wanted to. He certainly can't do it if he didn't have the wherewithal to do it himself, right? No, this is the party of democracy. the
Everybody
party
needs a
of
hand
the
sometimes.
Constitution.
Oh,
Yet they have
Dagger.
undermined democracy, undermined the
You get a
Constitution.
weapon. You get a weapon. You get a weapon.
Essentially, I want my soul.
You dish it out. I can take
What's
it.
going on? This is a significant and massive problem that needs to be sorted out. And
Hell unleashed! This has to see down for me. I'll give you more time.
Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, I don't think Hunter Biden.
Someone stretch my
Who
back!
is more immortal than I? You've captured more than half of the mission area. Keep going.
What he was doing in his private life. Yet he
We've seen the videos.
I love that, right? That was a really great montage. Hunter Biden.
Assemble!
That was in Oval Office meetings. Very high level. Oval Office meetings. Joe Biden. I think the whole country is worried about it.
I accept.
He Biden, his whole career prior to being president, was in fact moderate. Yet the whole country turned hard left. The administration turned hard left while he's being president. We all scratched our heads and said, it doesn't seem like who Joe Biden
My
is.
domain will
Now
one
we
day
know
encompass
there was a
all
cabal of
souls.
people in his administration who were part of the hard left, who were controlling what was going on. I think this is becoming clear. This is an absolute scandal of historic proportions.
30 seconds before you attack.
That is
Get
well
ready.
said. A scandal of historic proportions. But
Peter,
back on the
have you-
book Jake Tapper has put out, he's admitted on Megyn Kelly's program, he was been promoting the book everywhere, and he admitted to her that he's apologised to Lara Trump for dismissing her in a really quite a hostile manner when she raised
battle starts
issues
in
about Joe
5,
Biden's cognitive
4,
decline back in
3,
2020.
2,
Have a look.
1.
I think what we've
All
seen
you
on
need to do
stage
is
with
capture
Joe
the mission
Biden
area. Got
is
it?
very clearly a cognitive decline. That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable.
You have no I can't, it's so amazing. It's so amazing to me that
Trying to figure out an answer.
I'm barely harmed.
Suggesting
I think you were mocking his stutter. Yeah, I think you were mocking his stutter, and I think you have absolutely no standing to diagnose somebody's cognitive decline.
Disappear! Mission area is yours. Capture now.
Too little, too late, in my book. And
Don't mess with the amazing Spider-Man!
Biden's cognitive decline last year. Almost right up until he dropped out of the election.
You get a weapon! You get a weapon! You get a weapon!
Does he have?
Mission area is
What
yours.
damage is this book going to do to Joe Biden's legacy?
That's right.
Because there does seem to be large swathes of the country who watch CNN, MSNBC, and other leftist media who are surprised by these revelations. Who seem to have completely missed what the rest of us have been reporting for the last 5 years.
Punisher is on
No more hiding, Punisher.
The media has no Find that the media died in America. The point to when that happened. It happened during.
I am barely harmed.
It happened when they were covering up.
Assemble!
When they tried to cover it up, even after that.
Mission area. Keep going. Control lost.
The media has conspired on Russiagate, Russia, or our crazy idea that COVID came from a lab in Wuhan, right? Or that BLM wasn't really exactly mostly peaceful. These are all crazy conspiracy theories, right? Every single one of them obviously true. The question is
Here
how
comes
they can
trouble.
defeat the conspiracy theories of the right.
Your powers are mine!
It's spider time!
Hey, Genie! Enjoy the amplifier!
I mean, just talked about how it's they're saying that they debilitating cancer or David Axelrod saying that we need to put criticism aside right now, right? And actually question aside. No, that's exactly what we have to be asking. This is what we should be pushing this issue, right? No, they are not
Thanks for
concerned.
everything.
They are pushing and all of America should
Double KO.
the media and how
The area's almost yours.
by the way, I don't think there's any small
You get a weapon! You get a weapon! You get a weapon!
that we're seeing this happen, right? These stories are coming out, and Trump and Hillary are actually people look away sort of who the president was before, and the president now say, I think we have a pretty good
You'll have to keep fighting until we have a
Judge!
winner.
Jury! Executioner!
Cancer diagnosis, because again, this will be called a right-wing conspiracy theory. But
Control lost.
it suggests the majority of Americans at this point don't believe the official narrative that only discovered in recent days that this advanced cancer exists. In fact, a number
Their
of
team's
experts have
capture
come out and
progress
said
has
that's
passed the
almost
halfway point.
impossible to believe, given he's the president who would be subjected to regular health checkups, fairly thorough checkups. And it's just, to me, Army, mind-blowing that Joe Biden's family, seeing his mental and physical decline, wanted him to run again, wanted him to serve 4 more years, and the Democrats seem happy to help him do that until that disastrous debate performance. It's almost cruel. I mean, put aside everything else, the transparency, all the constitutional issues, but just the cruelty to a man who's obviously not fit to lead.
Yeah, and I'll say one of two things happened. Okay, I think this much is clear, and none of them were good. And one is they knew about the cancer diagnosis.
Don't mess with the amazing Spider-Man! Powers of mine! Don't mess with the amazing Spider-Man!
Richard Levine, the Biden administration's Assistant Secretary for Health. Well, he's been honoured by a women's college, yes, Smith College, presented Levine, a man identifying as a woman, with an honorary degree. And he also spoke to the school's graduating class. Now, to qualify for this honour, Smith College requirements state that the college will consider women who are possessors of excellence in a wide range of fields, both academic and non-academic. The criteria also says the college will also consider individuals who have had a special impact on Smith College on the education of men or on women's lives. I don't know. Army, what do you make of this? To me, it's almost satire material, but we continuously see men identifying as women being honoured with awards that are normally reserved for just women.
3, 2, 1.
First of all, Rita,
all you need to do is capture the mission area. Got it?
Right? And so
Can you pass the trial of your soul?
Look, I gotta be honest. It doesn't really matter to me. Smith College. Look, they give honorary degrees to pretty much anybody. It's really not that big a deal. I don't think that part of the story is a big part of the story. Although what I do want to point out, right, is Smith College itself. With a certain
an opportunity for combat.
Looks like the mission area is yours to capture now.
Smith College, not that long ago, had this story where
your minion souls are mine.
Capture the mission area.
Food in a cafeteria that was closed.
Find that soul.
For a number of reasons. And a janitor was given that instruction. Walked up her direction. See that full meltdown.
Find that soul.
Doing that. I am black. The creatures of the deep are so not kidding.
Oh yes, I recall that story.
Security guard. That's right. Security guard. Sorry, you're not allowed to be here. What does Smith College do? They fired the janitor, who's a working man from the area, and the security guards, right? After it was
I may
very clear
return
that she
from
was
my own
wrong.
realm.
They were following the diktat of the university themselves, yet they fired a lower class worker because a black woman was eating a person. Smith College. One last story I make.
That's Smith College. That is who they are. We've run out of time. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Their team's capture progress has passed the halfway point.
But it's time for lefties losing it. Let's start with just how nasty, bitter, and full of hate.
Us against the world!
This next woman is so demented.
Need more some squishy friends.
I shall claim my
And your
victory
grandchildren
eventually.
to die. That's not hyperbole. It's precisely what she says.
I would like for you to die of measles, polio, of all the horrible diseases.
They've almost got it!
Living in this
again.
Let's keep fighting until we have a winner.
Charming. She wants your family to die and your community to be gutted. In that attitude, that's what she said. That's from the side that likes to portray itself as tolerant and compassionate. And they also like to portray themselves as intelligent.
I'm very hard.
Let's hear from this young lefty who praises Hamas and claims that Israeli hostages have also praised Hamas, and in particular Hamas's complex organizational skills.
Long live, their really complex organizational skills that, talked about
So shall that king.
Dragon unleashed!
Hell unleashed!
And then she seems to indulge in some democracy denial. Is she really questioning that Donald Trump won the election?
I want the soul.
Well, snowflakes on the right didn't say anything about them. They're going up to the lawyers and themselves. He's out there saying that Trump won the election. We know he didn't win the election.
Let's check in with alleged comedian Stephen Colbert, who had billionaire Reid Hoffman on
Glory
his
is almost
show.
yours.
The guy who funded warfare against Donald Trump and
Hell's blades are sharp.
for spreading disinformation during the Senate race. And he also had to say sorry for suggesting that the assassination attempt was a false flag. But he's a lot more shy these days.
Judge, jury, executioner!
Keep fighting until we have a winner.
This is the best Hoffman.
Should we trust what's going on?
Well, I think, let me put it this way. What I want to say is that as Americans, we should be trying to help as much as possible. Right? We want government efficiency.
Yes.
But obviously, we could do
My
it in a
domain will
much
one
less
day
cruel
encompass
and much more
all
lawful manner.
souls.
Yes, cutting government waste and spending on mad green and trans projects is very cool indeed. But a very timid response there, not like the
30 seconds before you attack. Get ready.
Years. Let's hear from Elon Musk now. He was talking about his fellow tech billionaire Ego Rogan interview.
I am no sorcerer. I am a goddess. And you will. One day when you enter my realm.
The battle starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All you need to do is capture the mission area. Got it?
list coming out?
My past may be dead, Scotty. We didn't win this.
Fascinating.
Future is pretty
Time
clear.
for some local lefties losing their election to the Tasmanian senator. In the Australian Parliament, this morning was a senator in the Australian Parliament. Her name is
I'm very harmed.
She's mad about US tariffs.
Here's this life.
Us against the world!
Listen to how she would handle this issue. Talk about delusions
Looks
of
like the mission area
grandeur.
is yours to capture
It
now.
really is quite scary to think this woman is a senator.
Resistance is futile.
Capture the mission area!
Let's use these. Shall I? Find that soul.
It's huge, folks. It's huge. And Jackie Lambie
The
is no
maelstrom
stranger
has
to
taken
saying
them.
wildly unhinged stuff. Remember this
I want your soul. A great taste of
vision
hell.
for existence that XBA platform.
Must have no social conscience or conscience whatsoever. I don't know whatever
Healing. Why would I need healing?
To continue there, that is absolutely disgusting behaviour. And quite frankly, the therapist should be jailed.
Find that
That's sort of game time. Better off we're going to be, quite frankly, the power that man has, because of that platform that he's It's got to stop.
And let's not forget this meltdown on Sky News last year.
Beware, behind you!
And the key be thrown away. That bloke should not be having a right to be out there. His own hatred.
Exactly is spreading hate, Jackie.
More eager idiots.
Now we've got
Who is more immortal than I?
and Article 3 Project Senior Counsel Josh Hammer. We're going to look at some astonishing polling data that's just come out. Brace yourself, lefties.
Behold the god of thunder! I unleash the Bashanti Fantastic!
Team's capture progress has passed the halfway point.
That was formed in I think of creating, of engaging in civilization.
Who is more immortal than I?
You've captured more than half of the mission area.
You
Keep
see them
going.
starting to push back against that, and good. That's a good thing. You see them starting to limit the free speech of their own citizens, even as those citizens are protesting against things like the border invasion that got Donald Trump and a number of other
1 million souls are mine now, Namor.
An important ally. Part of that is going to be your respecting its own people, respecting its own sovereignty, and America can't do that job for them.
I am very hard.
We have another few million immigrants coming that are totally incompatible with Germany.
Judge, jury, executioner!
No escape from hell.
Death of Europe, I think I read a good book about that. The suicidal stupidity of European leaders who have just saved populations that are in countries.
Find that
the
soul.
US and that includes US taxpayers to step in and
I don't think that I heard a single word there that Katie Vance is wrong there. I mean, I'm not sure that I love Germany. I mean, I don't know there. I don't think there's anything wrong at all with what we just heard. They've been committing basically every form of suicide that a nation state can commit. They don't actually think of themselves as nations at the time of talking in the first place there. I mean, going all the way back to the Maastricht Treaty in Europe in the early 1990s, which was the predecessor to the modern European Union. You know, Europe really went hook, line, and sinker in the post-Berlin Wall, post-Cold War era. They really went hook, line, and sinker down
You still got a chance.
post-nationalism.
Let's keep fighting until we have a winner.
One economy, currency while we're out there. Let's have the Eurozone. Let's have a common currency. One central bank. What could possibly go wrong with this picture here? When you start going down that rabbit hole, you start treating all commodities and all human beings one and the same.
Feels like living.
From the hostile cultures that have nothing to do with our history.
So much for Nicholas. Find that soul.
Nation went in the first place there. So then you kind of combine that with these free speech censorship regimes. It's very, very, very dark stuff. And it's about time that someone is trying to put Europe in their place. It's trying to remind them, frankly, of what they were and what they could be again. It's
You
kind
need
of
not
a
fear
friendly
me.
nudge
If you
from a
do not
former and hopefully
oppose
soon to be again wholesome ally that Europe desperately needs. I'm not sure they're going to listen, Rita, but hopefully they do.
Josh, let's look at some polling data, and there's another way to put it. These are disastrous.
30
figures for
seconds
the
before you
Democrats.
attack. Get
The
ready.
favorability rating has dropped to a record low.
No
according to
one
CNN
escapes
polling.
hell.
CNN, folks,
I will bring
the
peace to the
American public overall,
Where there is evil in this universe, I will be there to balance it.
Shattered. The sword of Fouché is always with me. Democrat voters, there is just great dissatisfaction. The approval rating there is low.
The battle starts in
and
5,
the majority
4,
believe the party
3,
is headed in the
2,
right direction.
1.
Well, there's multiple reasons.
All you
for
need to
thinking
do is
that, right?
capture the
first of
mission
all,
area.
just at the
Got
fact
it?
that this party just simply cannot give up on its cultural
personally, I think
militants.
one
They
dude
cannot
is way
give
more
up
than
on their woke culture war they've been
right?
waging against the American people for years and years, arguably decades. Now, we saw that just as presidential address to the Congress about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago.
Some assistance, please.
High school girl who suffered traumatic brain injury because of a biological male. They couldn't be bothered to get off their butts to a park.
Looks like the mission area is yours to capture now.
They're consistently taking positions.
Healing power.
That's the stuff.
Behold the god of thunder! Maximum pulse!
And they're openly fighting on the national stage.
Quantum
to shut down the government.
Cosmic might
they're not on the same
returns.
page. They're taking radically unpopular issues. The party's a veritable dumpster fire, frankly, and they have no one to blame for this whatsoever other than themselves.
And there's no bad news for referees everywhere. Getting Bill Maher, who's top closures, are all having massive amounts of regret.
Some assistance, please. Healing power. Good to see you can back up all that bravado you did. You are not alone.
Timely
Your fate is sealed.
I'm just wondering what you
The cosmos heals you.
2 months in. I mean, you must have a feeling.
Tested again by
You've captured more than half of the mission area. Keep going.
My lot in with this team.
Oh no, it's the opposite.
All right.
Incoming.
Let's look at the data that's just come out earlier today from NBC News.
Healing power.
Into the second phase, President Trump has achieved his highest ever
Cosmic might returns.
Us against the world!
Judge, jury, executioner!
Do not give in.
The area is almost yours! Control lost!
Stronger together. Second chances.
It's clobbering time!
Cosmos heals.
Presidency has his entire term. Some polls show that he's maintaining support. Some show that it's a little bit, but it's still relatively past these
Quantum match.
Born again!
Part of your pay grade that you and I were just talking about. Donald Trump is, at this point, orders of magnitude more popular than the Democratic Party, and there's a reason for that. Over the weekend,
You totally rocked that out, Star-Lord.
There's
still so much to do.
Purporting to say that you
Be
cannot
proud, my
deport
friends.
these Aragua horrific transnational criminal gangbangers and these rapists and murderers and thugs there. Guess what? That's
My friend
popular.
has risen once
Deporting
more.
Thugs, deporting gangbangers, rapists, murderers, that happens to be
Strange has created a gateway.
Deporting someone like Mahmoud Khalil at Columbia University, someone who is here on a green card, who's not even a U.S. citizen, who's openly espousing the Hamas-Hezbollah party line, deporting him, that's popular. So the Democrats...
Another epic victory!
Take unpopular positions. Donald Trump just does the common sensical thing. He has this whole MAGA coalition, this coalition of the common sense. It's not an ideologically right-wing coalition. It's just a coalition that wants to do the simple, median American sentiment there, and that's why he's so popular right now.
Well, you mentioned that judge, and the Democrats, the media, are constantly bleating about a constitutional crisis. Donald Trump causing a constitutional crisis, but it seems the crisis is from these activist judges, and the one you just mentioned essentially trying to subvert the will of the people, the president's power. Tell me about this U.S. district judge issuing a 14-day restraining order to prevent a deportation of these criminals. And the Trump administration has just ignored it and has sent these people to El Salvador. Let's have a look at some vision of them arriving in El Salvador, where they're going to serve their prison terms.
The right heroes could make all the difference.
Taxpayer
I have mutant powers and a little demonic magic too.
So, 3 cheers.
I have
for
mutant
the Trump
powers.
administration here. Hip, hip,
I
hooray.
have mutant
I
powers
love how they have
and a
handled this
little
spat with the
demonic
judge.
magic
I love how
too.
they have handled this operation in general here. So Donald Trump invoking a seldom used 1798 statute called the Alien Enemies Act, literally goes back to the John Adams presidency, essentially giving him slightly more power than he normally has when it comes to expediting removals for certain types of aliens here who are essentially as global countries. And I think this
soul
probably
sword
where
can
the left
destroy
is
just
going
about
to
anything.
President Trump, they're saying that, oh, Trinidad, Sinaloa cartel, the Jalisco cartel there. They're not actually
We'll be coming in 30 seconds.
But actually,
Stay
yes,
strong.
they are. Actually, they literally are. I mean, the amount of Americans that have died along the U.S.-Mexico border over the past 15, 20 years or so, I mean, frankly, just focusing on the fentanyl issue alone, the amount of Americans who have tragically overdosed and died from fentanyl that's been shipped across the Mexican border there, it's completely sky high there. So invoking the statute, Trump got these 25 Venezuelan national, these non-citizens there, and said they're
Battle
passing
starts in
to
5,
Bukele
4,
down in El Salvador because
3,
of binational
2,
agreement between the U.S. and El
1.
Salvador. The judge tries to stop it. One, is that the police were literally in our constitutional system has
I have many faces.
it's our constitution the notion that one judge the entire federal government temporary restraining order is total garbage. That makes the judiciary fundamentally tyrannical branch. It would have struck people everywhere from Thomas Jefferson to Abraham Lincoln as completely antithetical to the separation of powers that are injunctions are here.
They hit a checkpoint. Now might be a good time to stop them.
You're not rid of me
But
yet.
government and companies are not the same, right? The way that you're running governments shouldn't be the same way you're running companies.
Do you know what Mussolini?
We want government efficiency.
Yes.
But obviously, we can do it in a much less cruel and much more lawful manner.
What do you make of Reid Hoffman's take on this?
Rita, I know that I don't really care what Reid Hoffman has to say, especially when I take when it comes to all things Reid Hoffman. I mean, this is a guy who's obviously never gone guess what? That doesn't mean that his opinions about anything other than the
Your powers are mine!
a lot there. I mean, Bill Gates,
Maximum pulse!
just so high on their own supply because they managed to strike the jackpot and win the lottery once when it comes to one investment there. They think that they therefore have all the solutions for everything that ails the entire world. Well, you know who's also created very high worth, very valuable
will
companies?
travel.
Oh yeah, a guy by the name of Elon Musk, who last I checked is actually the wealthiest man in the world there. I think that he probably had a thing
It's clobbering time!
Disappear!
Bring on the chaos! More efficient, cut costs, cut waste, and oh by the way, do all of that in a way that is actually
Just in time. Thanks.
subsidizing sexual subsidizing
Fantastic!
But you know, he's wrong. Elon Musk is right. Americans staying with Elon Musk, and they will continue to stay with Elon Musk.
My strength is back.
You stop them in their tracks.
Joining me now is best-selling author Douglas Murray's latest book on democracies and death cults, Israel and the Future of Civilization.
I was in trouble.
Will be released in April. You don't want to miss that. Douglas, let's start with the state of the Democrats in the US. While much of the media is preoccupied with 24/7 anti-Trump hysteria, the polling is showing Trump voters are pretty happy at the moment. But the Democrats are incredibly
Maximum pulse! Your powers are mine!
Content with their fate.
Disappear!
And as you can see in the graph, the never proven
It's clobbering
party crisis. Douglas, is this just a case of either either reacting to big election loss and having a bit of a tantrum? Or is there a deeper issue here? Because we are seeing the most radical voices now seemingly taking over the party.
Better stop that vehicle. There's still a chance to stop
Yes,
them.
that's right. I mean, it's inevitable, isn't it, that after the election wipeout, like the
ones that the Democrats suffered last November, it's inevitable that there is going to be a period of reflection, silence from them as they try to work out what to do. That's the case with any party that suffered such a blistering defeat. The interesting thing with the Democrats, you say that they seem to be leaderless. That's really because they are. I mean, it can't be stressed in the American system. I mean, there is, you know, Kamala Harris.
Every
and
mortal
what's his
is
name?
my
Oh yeah,
subject.
Waltz.
I rule
Bring
all.
what happened is they the election thumping that they got, and it's not like any of the Democratic Party wants to hear very much from either of them after having led them to that defeat. And then the rest of the parties, we've got Minority Leader Senator Schumer, who has been castigated by his party for making a budget deal with the Republicans. Nancy Pelosi,
Maximum
has criticized Chuck Schumer. And Chuck Schumer has in fact cancelled the book tour he was going to go on in the coming days because of threats to him.
We are
Not from
undefeatable!
but from fellow Democrats. And so that's the top of the party. You go to the layers of
Disappear!
and unfortunately you see Governor Gavin Newsom is trying podcasting, and that's because much of the district government keep an eye on burned to the ground a few months ago, and he didn't do very much to stop that. And so it's hard to see how a little bit of podcasting could make up for that. And it's the same all the way down the party. There are people like Don Lemon, the former CNN anchor who I mentioned in the New York Post, who claimed that the future of the party is the radical left wing of the party. But in fact, the only future of a party that those people are the future of is they are a future for the Republican Party. Because if the Democratic Party decides to take in the worst excesses of the Squad and others, then it's hard to see how the Republicans don't just continue winning for the foreseeable future.
Well, I did very much enjoy that piece in the New York Post. Very droll indeed, but it does beg the question, who is the next leader? You mentioned Gavin Newsom. He
My
is trying to
domain will one
position
day
himself as
encompass
somewhat of a moderate, a centrist, a point of difference from the AOCs and Bernie Sanders. What about Tim Walz? Apparently he has presidential ambitions.
I want your soul.
Well, where to even start with Tim Walz? He has cropped back up in recent days. First of all, to boast about his masculinity.
Unleash the Vishanti's power.
A man known as Tampon Tim. How much of a threat he was to the Republicans because of his masculinity. Odd sort of thing to be boasting about. And then he cropped back up in front of some sycophants on stage and talked about how he gets happy each day by he downloaded the Share app that apparently you have to monitor your shares. That's real man of the people stuff right there. And Tim Walz says he's added Tesla shares to that and was celebrating Tesla shares going down. Tim Walz should look at where his shares politically are right now, and he'd see that they're close to bankruptcy. It's really pathetic to see him doing that. The thing that they most need to do, Democrats, is they need to actually come up with some policies and some ideas that differentiate them from the Republicans. They spent years doing Republicans are fascists, it's the end of the Republic, democracy dies in darkness, it's voting Trump, it's Hitler, and it's all over. And it didn't work. It was really a total political play.
but it also just didn't work.
Perhaps I should be
Turned out the voters
grateful.
didn't believe them.
Feels
and
like
rightly
living.
so. But what do you do in the aftermath of that? They seem to be trying a little bit of stuff out, but they're going to have to put an awful lot more meat on the bone if they're going to look like a reasonable opposition. All parties need opposition, all governments need opposition. But apart from a bit of hollering about taxing the rich, there's very little there that the Democrats have to say.
Well, there are signs of the left's love of violence apparent again. It's really never been far away. We saw it with the BLM riots, the violent anti-Israel protests on university campuses, and the latest project seems to be attacking Tesla cars, Tesla dealerships, due to their hatred of Elon Musk. And
you'll need a top-notch team to win this one.
Those who should know better continue to rationalise what some are calling domestic terrorism.
Someone threw a Molotov cocktail at a Tesla service center. At least 5 Teslas blew up. When you pull out a chainsaw to celebrate firing thousands of people, they get mad. It's just that, you know.
Let's send these techno-fascist, oligarchs, and old-fashioned Nazis a message loud and clear.
The vandalism really shows the outright anger and rage that people are feeling about what Elon Musk is doing.
Douglas, they almost hate Elon Musk more than they hate Donald Trump these days. And this derangement, because it's not just disagreement, they want to see him destroyed.
30 seconds before you attack. Get ready.
They do. It's a rather strange turn for people from a political wing that talk about how much they love the environment so much, how they want to protect the environment.
How about charm?
To be setting light to anything, burning down, setting light to cars that run on renewable energy. That's a really great way to say I heart the environment, isn't it?
4, 3,
but yes,
2,
I mean, this any
1.
political side can do this.
All you need to do is
But it's
capture the
extremely
mission area.
dangerous stuff
Got it?
when you start to say like
Among
that. Well,
Asgardians,
if
Loki
you cut
has
federal
cleverness
spending,
and
you know,
Thor
you can't
courage,
expect people
but only
not to
I the
firebomb
vision to
things.
seize the future.
I mean, really? We're going there? Why?
I don't think that's
this desire to legitimize totally pointless, destructive political violence. I can only assume that some of these people are people who are very bored as well as very unpleasant indeed. They want a great cause. They spent years, as I said earlier, saying that Donald Trump is Hitler. Now they've decided, in fact, Elon Musk is Hitler,
I am
which means
returned
you've
to
got
claim
to
what is
burn
mine.
the cars or something, or flip the finger to people driving a certain type of car. Again, nothing shows moderation and be kind better than just swearing at your neighbors because they've got a car whose company is founded by a man whose political views you disagree with. I mean, it's astonishing. Again, this is for the Democrat Party. And for people like that guy who showed the beginning of that, meant to be, by the way, a late-night comedian. I don't know about you, but nothing he said or says is remotely funny. He's just one of these weird new clerics on American television who were hired as comedians. And then come out and give a boring lecture and excuse violence and think that will get them the big laugh. And we'll see. That's one reason why people are turning off those programs. But I'm sick of it. Because if the Republicans did that and said, why are you prosecuting so far before they start executing you? I think we'd all think that was a bit rough.
And they were bleating about it for 5 years. So it's violence on their side they seem to rationalise very easily. And you're right about those late-night comics. There's a reason why their ratings are in the toilet is because there's very few laughs. There's just lectures, and Greg Gutfeld is the big beneficiary there. Talking about celebrities, we've seen a number of them from the US with Trump one, and one of them, I've got to give her credit, Donald is now a resident of Ireland, and she started spreading election denial there. Most question was the first time in American history the president has won every swing state.
Shall we defy the king of his
Best
precious
friends and his largest donor was the man who owns and runs the internet. So I would hope that that would be investigated. Kamala Harris would still have stadiums with people who supported her, and Donald Trump was not able to do that. There you go, Douglas.
It's party time!
And so my question is, we investigation.
Yes, that's right. And one of the ways you can tell that Elon Musk
Maximum pulse!
is that there are never any negative pieces or negative things about Elon Musk on the internet. So, as ever, Rosie O'Donnell is as sharp attacked as she ever was. So remember, this is another comedian. Rosie O'Donnell. She's hilarious. You can just feel your face cracking up with the humor whenever Rosie appears and shines on the world.
No goddess is ever truly
Donald Trump
gone.
not filling up stadiums. I mean, that's just bizarre because, of course, I mean, I've been to Trump rallies. He very much fills up stadiums, very much filled up Madison Square Garden in New York and other places across the country. Here's one of the problems, of course, for the Democrats. Again, they can be pulled leftward by these now self-exiled unions like Rosie O'Donnell, who, by the way, Donald Trump was very largely elected in 2016, very largely won the Republican nomination to run for president because of his line about Rosie O'Donnell, which just got huge laughs and was hugely appreciated by people across the country. But Rosie O'Donnell and co, if they're going to do this stuff, what it really is a demonstration of denial. What the Democrats and others should face up to is that Donald Trump was and is extremely popular. He won the popular vote because he's popular. He filled up stadiums.
Against the world!
Sure, Kamala Harris can still the odd no one's disputing that, but if you've just lost an election, you don't pretend, you shouldn't pretend, that person has no popularity behind him. What you should do, work out why he's got it, see what you can do to adapt to the world that you're in, and see what you can learn. See if there are policies that you might learn from. Instead of claiming
like
that he's like
living.
faked his way to it, actually adapt and learn.
And,
So yes, I'm not sure Rosie O'Donnell's going to be able to teach the Democrats very much from her escape in Ireland. And by the way, the way that Ireland's going at the moment, it's certainly possible for Rosie O'Donnell.
She is in a very insular little echo.
Maximum pulse!
She doesn't actually know any top voters, so even though more than half the country, half of voters voted for Trump, she doesn't seem to know a single one. So that's Rosie for you.
Immortality has its
quickly, you wrote a
privileges.
superb piece for The Spectator about the latest attacks against Western civilization, and here we've got Britons being expected to be ashamed of their history, ashamed of things they should be enormously
This is
proud of,
real
like Shakespeare.
firepower!
Even Shakespeare's birthplace supposedly should be decolonised, Douglas, because it could be used to promote white supremacy.
Yes, this is the latest report by a dimwit, second-rate academic at a third-rate university who weirdly cooperating with the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust. And you would have thought the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust would like to celebrate Shakespeare's birthplace, but oh no, not in this year. So this second-rate academic cooperated with the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, and she has come to the conclusion that Shakespeare's racist and colonialist, or maybe even caused the colonial era himself. It's unclear. And also that Stratford-upon-Avon is a notorious meeting place of white supremacists. And it's always struck me, Rita, as I'm sure it has you, that whatever remaining skinheads there might be, they're forever gathering at places of poetry, like Stratford-upon-Avon, and reading sonnets. It's one of the things that always those guys. It's so preposterous, and by the way, the important thing about this is that it points to this central issue that we are being told in our place, in America, In all Western countries, we are being told all the time to be ashamed of our inheritance. And there's no reason to be ashamed of our inheritance. But what's weird about it is that we are being told it's all right, it's always
Maximum pulse!
They decided that one of the things and they've decided, among other things, to introduce more of a celebrated Bengali poet called Tagore.
Well,
now,
you can't expect
if
to
I
win
went
them all.
to Tagore's birthplace in Bengal and said, guys, you need some more Shakespeare here. It's really not on that you haven't got another poet that you're celebrating at the birthplace of this poet. I think people would think it was rather audacious. Well, guess what? We in England, we in Britain also think it's rather audacious, it's rude, and, to use a term, it's rather colonizing.
Indeed. Douglas Murray, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Pleasure as always.
Pick your hero.
Well,
or
there
villain.
are
I'm not
signs of
judging.
the left's love of violence apparent again. It's really never been far away. We saw it with the BLM riots, the violent anti-Israel protests on university campuses, and
I will bring
the latest
peace to
protest
this
seems to
universe,
be attacking
no matter the
Teslas,
cost.
Tesla cars, Tesla dealerships, due to their hatred of Elon Musk. And Douglas, I've got to say, those
Be
who should
wary.
know better
No
continue to
timeline exists where
rationalise
Magneto
what some are
yields.
calling domestic terrorism.
Someone threw a Molotov cocktail at a Tesla service center. At least 5 Teslas blew up. When you pull out a chainsaw to celebrate firing thousands of people, they get mad. It's just, you know,
Let's send these techno-fascist oligarchs and old-fashioned Nazis a message loud and clear.
Knit the dimensions back together if it were within my
Outright
power.
anger and rage that people are feeling about what Elon Musk is doing.
Douglas,
Open
they
your
almost
eyes.
hate Elon Musk
Reality
more
is
than they hate
but-
I will
Donald
bring
Trump these
peace.
days.
Perfection
and
is
this
unattainable,
derangement, because it's
but
not
that should not
just
stop us from trying to achieve it.
disagreement. They want to see him destroyed.
The battle starts in 5, 4,
They do. It's a rather strange
2,
term
1.
for
All you need to do
people
is capture
from
the
a
mission
political
area.
wing that talk
Got
about
it?
how much they love the environment
I like
so
to
much,
make
how
fire
they want
puns.
to protect the
They're pretty
environment, to be setting light to anything and burning it down, setting light to cars that run on renewable energy.
I require some
that's
aid.
a really great way to say I heart the environment.
Cosmic
isn't it?
micro.
But yes, I mean, any political side can do this. But it's pretty dangerous stuff when you start to say like that. Well,
Mission area is yours to capture
you
now.
can't expect people not to firebomb things.
Anyone willing to help?
Really? We're going there? Why this is to legitimize totally pointless. We are going to political violence. I can only assume that some of these people are people who are very bored, as well as very unpleasant indeed. They want a great cause. They
Destiny
spent
awaits.
years, as I said earlier, saying that Donald Trump is Hitler. Now they've decided, in fact, Elon Musk is Hitler, which means you've got to burn the cars or something, or flip the finger.
Some assistance,
driving
please.
certain types of car. Again,
Appreciate it.
nothing shows moderation and
I am at
be
your
kind
service.
better than just swearing at your neighbors because they've
Cosmic
got
Mike
a car
returns.
whose company is founded by a man whose political views you disagree. I mean, it's astonishing, but again, this is dead. It's kryptonite for the Democrat Party. And for people like that guy who you showed at the beginning, he's meant to be, by the way, a late-night comedian. I don't know about you, but I mean, nothing he said or says is remotely funny. He's just on these weird new clerics on American television. People who are
Be careful. Stranger's at it again.
and excuse violence and think that will get them the people.
I am ready to put on a show.
It's quite sickening to see that, because if Republicans did that and said,
More
well,
than half of the mission area.
before they start
Keep going.
executing you, I think we'd all think that was a bit wrong.
Control lost.
I think we would. I think that we would. We saw a riot on January 6th, and they were bleating about it for 5 years. So
The cosmos heals you.
The violence from their side, they seem to rationalise very easily. And you're right about those late night comics. There's a reason why their ratings are in the toilet, is because there's very few laughs. There's just lectures, and Frank Dunstone is the big beneficiary there. Now, talking about celebrities, we've seen a number of them threaten to leave the US this time.
By the eye of
Your team's capture progress.
I unleash the Vishanti's power! Born again!
American history, a president has won every swing state, and is also best friends, and his largest donor was a man who owns and runs the internet.
Second chances.
So I would hope that that would be investigated. Kamala Harris was filling up stadiums with people who supported her, and Donald Trump was not able to do that.
There you go, Douglas. Elon apparently owns and runs the internet now. And Kamala is hugely popular, so we'll investigate.
I'll get you next time.
Yes, that's right. And one of the ways you can tell that
We are in this together.
all of the internet is that there are never any negative pieces or negative comments about Elon Musk on the internet. As ever, Rosie O'Donnell is as sharp as she ever was. Remember, this is another comedian, by the way. Remember, Rosie O'Donnell. She's hilarious. I mean, you can just feel your face cracking up with the humour whenever Rosie appears and applies on the world. As for Donald Trump not filling up stadiums, I mean, that's just bizarre because, of course, I mean, I've been to Trump rallies. He very much fills up stadiums, very much filled up Madison Square Garden in New York and countless other places across the country. Here's one of the problems, of course, for the Democrats. Again, they can be pulled leftward by these now self-exiled comedians like Rosie O'Donnell, who, by the way, probably is having a kind of breakdown because Donald Trump was very largely elected in 2016, very largely won the Republican nomination to run for president because of his line about Rosie O'Donnell, which just got huge laughs and was hugely appreciated by people across the country. But Rosie O'Donnell and co, if they're going to do this stuff, what it really is a demonstration of denial. What the Democrats
All you need to do is capture the mission area.
Up to
Got it?
is that Donald Trump was and is extremely popular. He won the popular vote because he's popular. He filled up stadiums because he's popular. Sure, Kamala Harris could fill the odd hall. No one is disputing that. But if you've just lost an election, you don't pretend, you shouldn't pretend that that person has no popularity. I know what to do. Work out why you study.
Looks like the mission area is yours to capture now. I am ready to put on a show.
See if there are policies that might learn from.
This is real firepower!
Adapt and learn. And so yes, I'm not sure whether we're going to be able to teach the Democrats very much from her escape in Ireland. And by the way that Ireland's going at the moment, it's perfectly possible that Donald will have to move back to the States at some point soon, but that's
My
another
power
story.
cannot be quelled.
Well, she is in a very insular little echo chamber because in that interview, it appeared that she doesn't actually know any Trump voters. So even though more than half the country, half the voters voted for Trump, he doesn't seem to know a single one. So that's Rosie for you. Before we go, quickly, you wrote a superb piece for The Spectator about the latest attacks against Western civilization. Britain's being expected to be ashamed of their history, ashamed of things they should be enormously proud of, like Shakespeare. Even Shakespeare's birthplace is supposed to be decolonised, Douglas, because it could be used to promote white supremacy.
Yes, this is the latest report by an academic at a third-rate university who cooperating with the Shakespeare birthplace trust, and you would have thought the Shakespeare birthplace trust would like to celebrate Shakespeare's birthplace, but oh no, not in this era. So this second-rate academic cooperated with the Shakespeare birthplace trust, and she has come to the conclusion that Shakespeare's racist and colonialist.
By the eye of Agamotto!
And also the Stratton 1A is notoriously affected by white supremacy. It really struck me, as I'm sure it has you, that if whatever remaining skinheads there might be, they're gathering at places of poetry like Stratton 5 and reading sonnets. One of the things I think you can, one of the ways you spot those guys. By the way, the important thing about this is that as I said in that piece in Spectator, it points to this central issue that we are being told in our countries, in America, in Britain,
in a world
in Australia,
consumed by
in all
darkness,
Western countries,
I will gladly
we are
be the
being
light.
told all the time to be ashamed of our inheritance. And there's no reason to be ashamed of our inheritance. But what's weird about it is that we are being told it all the time. It's always a one-way street. This they decided that one of the things is there's too much Shakespeare's birthday. And they've decided, among other things, to introduce more of a celebrated Bengali poet called Tagore. Now, if I went to Tagore's birthplace in Bengal and said, guys, you need some more Shakespeare here. Yes, it's really not another poet that we're celebrating at the birthplace of Italy. I think people think it was rather audacious. Well, guess what? We in England, we in Britain also think it's rather audacious. And choose a term. This is Rick!
I feel better already.
Double sorry, thank you so much for your time. Now, talking about celebrities, we've seen a number of them threaten to leave the US if Trump won, and one of them, I've got to give her credit, she followed through with it. Rosie O'Donnell is now a resident of Ireland, and she started spreading election denial there.
I question
Got a lot of complaint.
why the first time in American history a president has won every swing state, and is also best friends, and his largest donor was a man who owns and runs the internet. So I would Kamala Harris was filling up stadiums with people who supported her, and Donald Trump was not able to do that.
There you go. That apparently owns and runs the internet now. And Kamala was hugely popular, so we need an investigation.
Yes, that's right. And one of the ways you can tell that Elon Musk runs all of the internet is that there are never any negative pieces or a negative comment about Elon Musk on the internet.
I will bring peace to this
Rosie O'Donnell is
universe,
as
no matter
sharp
the cost.
tact as she ever was. So remember, this is another comedian, by the way. Remember, Rosie O'Donnell. She's hilarious, isn't she? I mean, you can just feel your face cracking up with the humor whenever Rosie appears and opines on the world. As for Donald Trump not filling up stadiums, I mean, that's just bizarre because, of course, I mean, I've been to Trump rallies. He very much fills up the stadium, very much filled up Madison Square Garden in New York and countless other places across the country. Here's one of the problems, of course, for the Democrats. Again, they can be pulled left by these now self-exiled comedians like Rosie O'Donnell, who, by the way, probably is having a kind of breakdown because Donald Trump was very largely elected in 2016, very largely won the Republican nomination to run as president because of his line about Rosie O'Donnell, which was got huge up and was hugely appreciated by people across the country. But the Rosie O'Donnell and co, if they're going to do this stuff, what it really is a demonstration of denial. What the Democrats should face up to is that Donald Trump was and is extremely popular.
Bro, how many thing, man? They're running behind me.
He filled up stadiums because he's popular. Sure, Kamala Harris could fill the odd hall. But if you just lost an election or something, you don't pretend, or you shouldn't pretend, that
I am ready to put on a show.
Behind him, what you should do is work out why he's done it, see what you can do to adapt to the world that you're in, and see what you can learn. See if there are policies that you might learn from. Instead of claiming that he's like faked his way to it, actually adapt and learn. And so yes, I'm not sure whether John Oswald's going to be able to teach the Democrats very much from her escape in Ireland. And by the way that Ireland is going at the moment, it's perfectly possible Rosie O'Donnell will have to move back to the States at some point soon, but that's nothing to talk about.
Well, she is in a very insular little echo chamber because in that interview, it appeared that she was actually knowing the Trump voters. So it's more than he would like to be that's Rosie for you. Before you go, just quickly, you wrote a superb piece for The Spectator about the latest attacks against Western civilization, and Britons being expected to be ashamed of their history, ashamed of expected to be enormously proud of, like Shakespeare, even Shakespeare's birthplace. Supposedly should be decolonised, Douglas.
Bro, what the fuck is
to
this?
promote white supremacy.
Yes, this is the latest report by a dim-wit, second-rate academic at a third-rate university who, weirdly, cooperating with the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust. And you would have thought the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust would like to celebrate Shakespeare's birthplace, but oh no, not in this year. So this second-rate academic cooperates with the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, and she
By the eye of Agamotto!
maybe even caused the colonial era. And also the Strathclyde is notoriously of white supremacists. It's always struck me, as I'm sure it has you, that whatever remaining skinheads there might be, they're forever gathering at places of poetry, like Stratford-upon-Avon, and reading sonnets. It's one of the things I think it's one of the ways you spot them, those guys. It's so preposterous, and by the way, the important thing about this is that as I said in that piece in Spectator, it points to this central issue that we are being told in our country, in America, in Britain, in Australia, in all the rest of the
ready to put on a show!
to be ashamed of our inheritance, and there's no reason to be ashamed of our inheritance. But what's weird about it is that we are being told it all the time, and it's always one way. This is the Shakespeare's birthplace. They decided that one of the things is there's too much Shakespeare in Shakespeare's birthplace. And they decided, among other things, to introduce more of a celebrated Bengali poet called Tagore. Now, if I went to Tagore's birthplace in Bengal and said, guys, you need some more Shakespeare here. It's really not on that you haven't got another poet that you're celebrating at the birthplace of this poet. I think people think it was rather audacious. Well, guess what? We in England, we in Britain also think it's rather audacious. It's rude, and to use a term, it's rather colonised.
Indeed. Douglas Murray, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Pleasure as always.
It's time for Lefties Losing It. Now, we all remember Neil Young humiliating himself by firstly boycotting Spotify in protest against Joe Rogan. After trying to get the world's most popular podcaster cancelled for so-called misinformation during the COVID era, he wrote, "They can have Rogan or Young, not both." Yes, he wrote that in an open letter. The silly old delusional fool was back at Spotify with his tail between his legs. Seems money trumped his principles. Now he has launched another protest with a song lambasting Elon Musk. So
I am no
let's see what
golden
he's
god.
singing here.
I am
He's
simply
singing
a
what?
man who wishes to use his power for good.
Yeah, okay, that's as bad as I expected. If you're wondering what he's saying there, because it's very hard to
tend
tell,
to
the
lost
lyrics
souls,
are,
like a
if you're
shepherd
a
tends to his
fascist,
flock.
get a Tesla, it's electric,
Why,
it
thanks.
doesn't matter.
I will
I'm going
bring
to play
peace to
you
this.
the
What are
next
you
10
calling a
seconds. I think that's
We
all we've
guard
been
the
studying
galaxy,
for one
sure.
day.
But
Get ready
sometimes
30
to
seconds
print
before you
some
attack. Get ready. Let us know. I know all of your songs. It's always an honor to be with them.
Somehow that next 10 seconds was even worse than the first. And the lyrics there, and I have to tell you the lyrics, because it just sounds like incoherent wailing. But what he's saying there is, if you're a Democrat,
The battle
taste
starts
your
in
freedom,
5,
get whatever
4,
you want,
3,
taste your freedom.
2, 1.
Profound stuff. Now,
All you need
let's
to do
talk
is
some
capture the mission
really
area.
lefty
Got it?
violence. I hate it when they turn on each
don't
other.
think I
Here
could
is
handle
veteran
the pressure
Democrat
of the dark
strategist
force.
and Trump deranged
Anya?
Lou
I
James
need your
Carville
help.
talking to a junior Democrat strategist and Trump deranged vice chair of the Democratic National Committee, David Hogg. Grab the popcorn, folks. This is fun.
I suck.
This time I need your help.
The mission area is yours. Us against the world.
Not in control.
Behold, their child.
This is real firepower.
Capture the mission area.
Anything to do with the DNC?
Oh, it gets better. James Carville is extra spicy here.
I called on Joe Biden to
Destiny
drop out of the
awaits.
race in 2022. Where were you? Where was the young cool generation coming? Did they step in there and say something? I spoke out against the horrific language of identity politics.
You're ready.
Where was
A nice
everybody
deep
else?
freeze.
The Cosmos Shield is on the way.
Where's the election?
Assemble!
So good. Now let's hear from Hollywood has-been Sean Penn, and listen to this. Absolutely.
Supernova!
Fire mode. Hits the ground. Look at your team's capture progress is past the halfway point. I like the cold. Attack, Buzzball.
You think you'll try to stay on?
Control C.
Now,
Systems
do you
restoring.
think there was any pushback against that madness from Jim Costa or Eric Bang Solwell? No. Instead, we got this from the man who had an affair with a Chinese Communist Party spy. The nerve of this dude, this is just more tedious.
In the history of dictators or those
Keep
that
an eye on
aspire to
this
be
spot.
dictators, there's never a succession.
I suck.
There's never been something where he doesn't believe that somebody who's protected.
Thanks so much.
These people are nuts and massive because I remember
Us against the world.
Venezuela. Yes.
Born again!
Capture half of the mission area. Keep going. Hurry now. One time. I suck.
You're talking about the dictator there, seriously. Now, I tell you, TDS is a chronic condition, and indeed, if you believe the president, it is a facial condition.
I have found more lost. I feel better already.
Be careful over here. The area's almost yours.
Behold, their child!
Quantum
Assemble!
He really is
This is real firepower! Supernova!
Let's keep fighting.
expensive proposition.
Let's bring in Sky News contributor Kosha Gator. Kosha, the Obamas went into the White House with meager assets. They now worth somewhere between $70 to $250 million. And Michelle Obama continues to push this grievance politics. Is there no one in her inner circle who is telling her, this just looks terrible, you look so entitled and miserable?
Seemingly not. It really is fascinating. And, you know, there's tone deaf, and then there's tone deaf. This is just beyond the pale. Like, oh, you know, we have to pay for our daughter's travel and on a private jet. On a private jet.
Taxpayer pays for.
I know, with Secret Service and everything else. And yeah, most of us, if we're traveling with our kids to any corporate event, yeah, the employer doesn't pay for our kids when we go and travel.
Pick your hero.
So just the
or
tone deaf
villain.
is
I'm
really
not
funny.
judging.
She's criticized Barack Obama a lot too on these podcasts.
This is what's been interesting. She barely has anything positive to say about her husband, which in itself is
No
raising
timeline
eyebrows.
exists where
that's what's interesting about
I will bring
grievance,
peace
because
to
there's
this
the,
universe,
you know,
no
the
matter the
boilerplate
cost.
grievance that they all do about racial injustice and social injustice. But in her case, it's personal. Like,
Thank you to American Financing for sponsoring this video.
The attacker strikes at all times of the day across Brooklyn. Police say each assault is escalating, becoming more
30
violent.
seconds before you attack. Get ready.
So Brooklyn is falling apart from a public safety perspective, and things just seem to be getting worse. Because over the last few weeks, there have been multiple frightening incidents, all happening one after the other, with police and investigators arriving on the scene in force, but only after everything's over. But the worst part is nobody in charge here seems to care, which makes it look like this is being allowed to happen on purpose.
This is exclusive video obtained by News 4 of a man wanted by police. Watch as he walks into this Brooklyn store. The guy in those squeaky clean white shoes spends several minutes hanging around before police say he attacked a 60-year-old woman.
Police are asking for your help to find 3 people they say are connected to a home invasion. 3 people entered the home and threatened a woman inside before stealing a safe containing around $15,000.
Police remain here on the scene, focusing much of their attention at this home here behind me. They say the incident stemmed from a domestic situation involving a 49-year-old man.
There are now more burglaries, grand larcenies, and auto thefts being committed than there were a few years ago, and according to the NYPD, these crimes are being done by repeat offenders.
Well, they've been terrorizing the streets of Brooklyn for years.
But tonight, more than a dozen alleged gang members are under arrest.
One of the team sources described one of the pre-indicted suspects wearing tactical gear and carrying special equipment.
Things are now so out of control in Brooklyn, gangs are breaking into the sewer system for reasons the authorities have yet to figure out. But what nobody's talking about is this uptick in madness seems to be happening at a very strange time. Because we're just a couple of months into a massive police surge taking place in our subways, which has removed a lot of police from neighborhoods like this one. A surge which our leaders are championing as making the entire city safer and finally bringing down crime. However, recent information's come out which conflicts with that narrative, showing that most of the gains underground have happened at the expense of our streets. And sadly, when you're using the train and you see extra police, you might feel safer down there, but you gotta realize those cops, they came from up here, which is what happens when the city doesn't have enough police to begin with. In fact, one precinct in the Upper West Side reported losing over 20 officers who were taken from their posts and sent below ground. And what we're seeing now in many parts of the city is that if you stack police in one area of town, like the subway, you just scare criminals away to other parts of town where they continue doing their thing. Which brings us to the real reason we're now dealing with a crime wave in Brooklyn. There are police around to do anything about it. And to make matters worse, the police we do have are so short-staffed and so handcuffed by New York City's anti-cop policies, like those that force them to fill out endless paperwork for even the most basic of interactions with the general public, that cops have a choice to make. Do they stop the crime happening in front of them, or do they let it go in the hopes that something worse takes place later and they're available to try and stop it? Well, as you're about to see, the answers to those questions are why this entire neighborhood is now so dangerous. Some say it's past the point of no return.
Sue Richards, ready to...
I do the right thing unless the wrong thing is more fun.
So here we are in downtown Brooklyn, where you essentially have a tale of two cities. You've got some modern, high-rise buildings that have pricey luxury apartments in them, and you've also got a hodgepodge of stores that nobody wants to rent out for any purpose, some of which have been vacant for years, which reveals that there's something causing a lot of problems down here, especially for stores like this one, and that problem is a growing criminal underworld.
This is exclusive video obtained by News 4. The man wanted by police watch as he walks into this Brooklyn store. The guy in those squeaky clean white shoes spends several minutes hanging around before police say he attacked a 60-year-old woman near Main Street in Ashland.
So there's a lot of crime down here, no question about it. But what's most frightening is when you have individuals who aren't wearing any masks, aren't even trying to hide themselves, and they're out there just singling people out and going after them. That happened right over here by these stores. And although this might not seem as wild as some of what's taken place in this neighborhood over the last few months, you know a particular area of town has reached rock bottom when mopeds are riding on the sidewalks and when thugs prowl them as well. This 7-Eleven appears to be the store where this guy was caught on camera. Right across the street, you got these high-end luxury apartments coming in, but on both sides of the 7-Eleven, you've got stores that nobody wants to open, and that's in spite of the city trying to keep this place clean. Because you could spend all the money you want cleaning the sidewalks. That's not going to stop a crime problem, which our laws do not allow to be cleaned up, because by not punishing people when they do things that are wrong, we just encourage criminals to keep being criminals.
This is very serious.
Magneto raised me to never stop fighting for what I believe is
Patty
right.
lives near the scene of one of the attacks. She did not want to show her face.
He can get more and more violent because he's succeeding. And each time he succeeds, he gets more empowered. 30 seconds before you This is attack. very serious.
Police say this attacker ambushes.
You know, she's right. That's exactly how crime works. If you encourage it, you're just gonna get more of it. And if you've got one criminal roaming the streets, doing whatever they want, what message does that send to other criminals who might want to follow in their footsteps? Sadly, it lets all the copycats know that the world is their oyster, so to speak, because the law-abiding are just sitting ducks to these people. And even if people do get arrested, what good is it doing us when we've got massive spikes like this in repeat felony assaults? This article mentions a guy with 87 prior criminal offenses who is still somehow out on the streets, roaming the subway. Ah, yes, the subway, the same place we sent all of our police to make a difference, which they're doing. But what difference does it make if so many cops are down there aren't any up here on the streets to protect businesses that might want to open up? What we're looking at here is a giant catch-22. Stacking police in one part of town isn't going to fix it, which most people would say is the logical result of decriminalizing crime.
Because it's a sort of tight-knit neighborhood, people less willing to let friends and neighbors know, to let their children know. This is traumatizing.
Patty hopes community awareness.
You know, I hate to say this, but nothing encourages criminal behavior more than a legal system that arrests the same people over and over again and releases them over and over again. This is basically the ultimate slap in the face to the law-abiding who aren't any safer, yet are told that by the presence of police, their lives are better off, when they aren't really. And I say that with some hesitation because obviously people are less likely to offend if there's an officer standing right there, but as soon as they turn their back, what's that criminal gonna do, especially if they know there's no consequences coming their way? Look at the guy who was caught going after people at 7-Eleven. He was on camera, he didn't seem to care, and he's still out there. Police say the problem is we've got a justice system that is essentially a revolving door and sets people loose after they commit crime. Now, if you're a cop, and that's what bosses are saying, how motivated is that going to make you to arrest this guy? He's just going to be back out on the streets, back in this 7-Eleven, which sadly is the opposite of what progressives tell us decriminalization is all about. We're told that's all about making neighborhoods safer and keeping people out of jail, when the exact opposite of that is what we're experiencing. Now, I'm sure at some point this guy's going to get caught and arrested, but it's anyone's guess how long that's going to take, and what will he do between now and then? That's the real question. But even with his face and actions being caught by store security, will our justice system have the heart to follow up? One of the big controversies in our legal system is how felonies are downgraded to things like misdemeanors to make them go away and not appear as statistics. And not only is there a frighteningly strong likelihood that nothing happens to this guy when he gets caught, but when he gets caught, we find out that lo and behold, he's got prior infractions. intention. Get this way by accident, which reveals that our neighborhoods are falling apart and it's being allowed to happen on purpose. Because here we are, operating under this misguided, brain-dead idea that punishing nobody for nothing is just going to make the world a better place. And as you're about to see, this is hurting Brooklyn in ways most people haven't even considered. With everything happening in the economy, it feels like we're walking on shaky ground. Prices are stuck at really high levels, and it seems like nothing is affordable anymore. It's no wonder why many are relying on credit cards to cover gaps. But because of that, credit card debt is skyrocketing, and it's a lot of people tapped out. But if you're a homeowner, you don't have to face this uncertainty alone. My friends at American Financing can help you take control. They can help you access the equity in your home to help you pay down high interest credit card debt, giving you peace of mind and real savings. On average, people like you are saving around $800 a month, and they may be able to close your loan in as little as 10 days. Don't let the chaos of the economy get the best of you. Call America Financing now. It costs you nothing to get started, and you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments, giving you a cushion in this uncertain time. Here's what you need to do. Call 866-890-4844. That's 866-890-4844. Or visit AmericanFinancing.net/tap.
A disappearance.
So here we are in a charming little community with beautiful buildings like this. There's plants, there's flowers, and this community is asking its neighborhood to step up and take a stand against the crime that's happening just down the street from here. But since we just learned how reporting street crime does nothing to stop criminals, some of whom get arrested multiple times and never seem to learn any lessons, nobody should be surprised when the crime here at street level goes up the stairs and enters these apartments.
Police are asking for your help to find 3 people they say are connected to a home invasion that happened back in January. 3 people entered the home and threatened a woman inside before stealing a safe containing around $15,000.
So here you've got some home invaders who were armed, went into an apartment in Brooklyn and stole money out of a safe. Now, how do you think they got the idea to go and do that? Is it conceivable that these are people who were out committing a whole bunch of decriminalized offenses and just decided that they wanted to graduate and do something else? Were they bored? By not punishing crime, you turn this city into a training ground for criminals. And you take petty thugs who commit misdemeanor offenses that they don't even think are a big deal because our laws don't, and you harden them to a point where they decide breaking and entering an apartment is a good idea, knowing full well that the no consequences environment our city has turned itself into isn't going to stop them. And what this does is it sets people on a ladder where the crimes they commit get increasingly worse until they finally do something so bad that this happens.
30 seconds
They've been
before you
terrorizing
attack.
the streets of Brooklyn for years with guns and violence.
But tonight, more than a dozen alleged gang members are under arrest. Our Lisa Evers was there for the exclusive takedown at an early morning raid.
So a few months ago, this massive gang takedown took place, and everybody was cheering it. The problem is, nobody was asking the right questions. Like, how did these people decide that becoming gang members was a good idea? Is it possible that since our justice system fights crime with one hand tied behind its back, that these criminals decided to terrorize Brooklyn because there was nothing standing in their way? This is because the real problem New York has is called recidivism. Look at this, since 2018, offenders with 3 or more arrests in a single year for the same crime, numbers are up 147%. The only lessons people are learning is how to not get arrested next time and spend a few hours in the back of a police car. We're just teaching the criminals who invade homes or rob stores or go after others that they're allowed to keep doing it. That's why when you enter stores in this city, every single thing is locked up, because no matter how much someone steals and how many times they get arrested, the stores know nothing's preventing them from coming back and trying again, so now it's on them. And the reason you've got gang members is because not everybody wants to steal from CVS forever and resell that stuff on the side of the street. Some people are gonna say that, hey, if I can rob one place, I could probably get away with something worse. And what happens? They try.
Wearing tactical gear and carrying special equipment. You can see the terror posted outside.
Look at that. You've got police force out there with special equipment taking these criminals down. We're already short-staffed on cops. And what do? We wait until criminals do something really horrible or get really bad, and then we have to send extra cops to go get them. And what does that do? It just magnifies the staffing problems we've already got with our police, leaving more streets and neighborhoods unattended and unguarded, which just allows more of the same types of crime they would say are already out of control. The New York Post has a poll. Do you feel unsafe in New York City? Uh-oh, those aren't great numbers, but this is what happens when you hobble your cops and prosecutors by state laws. Meant to keep crooks free and happy. And if you thought it was bad enough that people get arrested and let go over and over again for the same types of crimes that are caught on camera, part of the reason this is so bad is because of what this article calls discovery law reforms that hamper prosecutors with insane amounts of paperwork if they're going to try and charge anybody with anything. That's why so many crimes are getting dropped. It's just too much work.
I was born in the middle of Brooklyn, not too far from where we stand here today. I have family that lives here. There's a profound impact on the community when you see stores being apprehended and placed in jail. There's a lot.
You know, I feel for these police. They definitely be proud of taking down violent criminals like this. The problem is they're fighting the system that created those criminals. And their battle to keep this city safe is a losing one. How do you beat a system that just rewards unpredictable bad behavior? You don't. And if we're just going to tell criminals that their actions are not a big deal, you know who's fault? It's law abiding. It's going to be their fault. Bad things happen to them because we're telling criminals that it's not their fault. So who does decriminalization help? That's an honest question. I can only think of two groups: the criminals and the people who vote for policies like this because they feel guilty for some reason, or they've been tricked into thinking that if somebody finds themselves in jail, it's society's fault and not criminals. And this is astounding because with 70% of people being rearrested for a felony after committing some other type of crime, all this does is prove that if those folks had lost their freedom after their first arrest, 100% of their repeat offenses never would have happened. But the truly frightening thing here are charts like this that show major types of crime that people really care about all higher than they used to be. And this is happening in a very short period of time. But the real problem is as we dig and search for the root causes of crime, when we see actual crime, we don't do anything about it because we don't think it's the problem. And our city is so busy making up excuses for why crime here is out of control and getting worse that we just refuse to do anything about it. What should we do about it? Should people get released constantly? Is that how they're going to learn? Or is it unreasonable to assume that you could stop 100% of repeat offenses by putting people in jail the first time they do something wrong? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.
You're welcome.
A new study out today says the true cost of living is half of families in the do not have enough income to make ends meet. They need some kind of assistance.
Well, that explains why people are leaving, but what's going to happen when everybody who's not rich vanishes from New York City? And why is it that nobody who's in charge here seems to care?
New Yorkers are feeling less positive, not very safe, and unsatisfied with most city services.
Costs in New York City have increased 131%.
What are you gonna do? Not eat? Not pay your rent?
We make decent salary, but it's still not enough to survive in New York City.
Half of all city households don't make enough money to meet the minimum cost of living in New York City.
The middle class is leaving the city of New York. What we find with the people that we work with is that they're making tough choices between food and medicine.
Just 37% of New Yorkers felt safe in their neighborhoods, down from 50% in 2017. And only 11% feel the government is spending tax dollars wisely.
All those things that New Yorkers believe that are important, the report says that we are on the right track. The goal is to continue to put on that right track.
So 78,000 fewer people now reside in New York City. And this is not a one-off. It's been happening for the last 5 years. And what nobody's talking about is that if this trend continues, New York will be a city for the very rich and then whoever's still here. Which means New York could be headed for a dystopian contrast between the ultra-wealthy who can live wherever they want and the destitute who cannot afford to leave. And even though that might lead to a city that can't function properly, nobody in charge seems to mind that it's happening. Which means they either don't know it's happening or they benefit from it in some way. But before we get into what this means for the future of New York, it's important to understand that the problem of people leaving doesn't just affect wealthy areas like Manhattan, and that's because even the city's most parts of town are no longer places everyday people can afford to live.
Now, we told you about this earlier in the week that New York City is losing some folks, right? Some residents. But it turns out that New York State is also seeing the population drop.
Yeah, according to the Census Bureau, New York lost 102,000 people, by far the most of any state. California.
Wow, okay, so it's not just the city that's losing residents, which means it's not just New York City that's got an affordability problem, it's the entire state. And if somebody can't afford to live in the city itself and they get displaced, they're probably leaving the state altogether. And look at this. These are the top 10 counties with population loss nationwide last year. Look at all the New Yorks you see in there. That's crazy. And the Bronx alone lost 2% of its population in 2023. And the Bronx is New York City's most affordable borough, considerably cheaper than where we are now in Midtown Manhattan. But the people living in these tiny luxury box apartments, they're rich. So rich, in fact, that the cost of living in New York, which has increased drastically, doesn't bother them.
The reason behind a true cost of living report that found costs in New York City have increased 131%, while median...
Wow, a 131% cost of living increase. Nobody gets a 131% raise unless you're super rich, which is why only the rich can afford to stay here. And wages are just not keeping up with the cost of making it in New York. Even jobs that would require a degree, it's still not enough for people to afford what it takes to live here. And this isn't just because the price of apartments is absolutely insane. No, there are other reasons why people are packing it up and calling it quits that have nothing to do with the rent. $6.99.
Many New Yorkers are struggling to afford basic needs as they deal with the rising cost of housing.
Half of all city households don't make enough money to meet the minimum cost of living in New York City, and nearly 80% of households are considered housing burden, which means more than...
Okay, so it's not just that you have to make $100,000 to live here and be able to afford food. The real issue is that most jobs in New York City don't pay that. And certainly not everybody that works here is a millionaire. And that has a lot to do with why so many people are calling it quits. On top of that, 8 million Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And what that means is even a high income isn't enough to keep you in a place like New York forever. And the first reason New York City is shrinking is because who wants to work that hard for so little? Just to essentially be living paycheck to paycheck. It's like a gigantic hamster wheel. Once you get off, you're done. And think about what you sacrificed to live as if you had absolutely nothing in a tiny little apartment. In fact, one study suggests people making $100K feel like they're only making about 36. And that's after taxes are factored in, which makes shopping even at a place like Target something that is almost unaffordable for the vast majority of people. On top of that, groceries in New York cost more than they do in other places because of all the extra costs associated with doing business in a place like New York. And of course, the shoplifting and crime epidemic here also affects prices. There are more products locked up in jail than there are criminals in this city. But before we get into where this unaffordability crisis is taking the city, it's important to understand that it's the city's fault that it's happening. And it might only get worse. And that's because New Yorkers pay more taxes than anybody else. Which means not only does it cost an arm and a leg to stay here, after you get paid, the government takes the other arm or the other leg. And this is what we have to show for it, peel and paint. And it comes out to about an extra $12,000 per person on average for the best infrastructure in the whole world. And that's because New Yorkers don't just pay state income tax, federal income tax, they also pay something called city tax. And the sales tax here is higher as well whenever you buy candy, soda, or pretty much anything. But in spite of that, our transit system is as old as the Stone Age, the streets are full of crime, and the National Guard was even recently deployed to subway stations just like this one. But we can't afford for them to be here all day, so they leave stations like this after about an hour and a half every morning. But if you think all that sounds terrible, wait until you hear what it costs to live in a tiny apartment. Because not only were price records set a year ago, this year things are going to be even worse.
This is real firepower!
Harold Towers, most affordable luxury building in Midtown. Studio apartment, over $3,000 a month. And you gotta ask yourself, who thinks coming here is a good idea? They're all compared to the average U.S. home, which is over 2,000 square feet, this ain't nothing. But living in a New York City apartment, it's like living in a little box. They don't have a lot of space. And for that reason, most places, they lease, and then 2 to 3 years later, they're back on the market. If they even make it past the first year, people move out fast. And you've got to ask yourself, how sustainable is it for New York to be a place where you have transient tenancy in most buildings? You don't have people who are staying here for 10, 20, 30 years after they get a place. And what that means is these apartments only rent because they support some other activity or some other purpose. And once that activity or purpose dries up, the person who was living there moves out. And the scary thing is that even if you're able to afford New York City today, there's no guarantee that's going to be the case tomorrow.
You're halfway there. Keep going.
36% of households lacked enough income for basic needs just 3 years ago.
Okay, so incomes have gone up to 71%, which seems pretty good. But again, that's only about half of the 131% cost of living that we're all facing right now. Even if your income went up 100%, you still wouldn't be able to afford New York. And that's why people are struggling, working separate jobs, becoming part of the gig economy just to try and scrape by. But that brings up a very uncomfortable question. If normal people can't live here and the rich are the only ones who can afford to stay, what is that going to turn the city into? Where is it headed and what's it going to look like? So the problem with people leaving the city is that the city looks at all of us as if we have a dollar sign on the top of our head. And when we leave, that dollar sign disappears, and so does the amount of money the city has access to by way of people and businesses. Every time you buy something, the city gets paid. And every time you get paid, the city gets paid. Businesses pay massive fees for licenses and things needed just to exist. And that's why you'd think that people leaving would be something that more of our elected leaders would be concerned with, unless they have some other plan that we don't know about.
What a conundrum for a middle-class New Yorker to be in. Rasmus, a paralegal, his wife, a supervisor.
So one of the big problems for the city is that if people are leaving and those people have families, like let's say my family leaves, my kids are going to live here and pay taxes in the future. And all the money I had to spend raising them was spent somewhere else, which means the city is replacing its future stable tax base with a transient one. Long term, that's very unstable because it means the only people here can leave at the drop of a hat. And for an economy to survive sudden shocks, you can't have a population that can just pack all their stuff up, throw it in a van, and skip town. And that brings us to another crisis caused by population loss, which isn't going anywhere anytime soon. And that has to do with the idea of New York entering what is called an urban doom loop. And this is also caused by population loss, but not necessarily in the ways that people think. So that right there is a little apartment building, but then over here you have offices. And think about it, if people move out of the city, they're not going to use those offices anymore, are they? And that's exactly what's happening. Even the cheapest commercial real estate's sitting empty right now. In fact, the city has almost 100 million square feet of vacant office space. And just like every person in the city has a dollar sign above their head, every office building has dollar signs above it as well. And that's because the city makes millions of dollars in property taxes. And offices only have value if they're being used for something. If they're for rent, stay empty, their value goes down. And if even massive chains like Panera Bread can't make it in Midtown, and they move out, if you take the landlord to secure another tenant, companies just don't need to use the space like they used to, and therefore they sit empty like this space. Well, if that happens and the value of commercial real estate drops, the city is going to earn less money from its property taxes. And if the city has less money to run itself, what do you think its options are? Well, the first problem is that they're both bad. Either cut taxes or reduce spending. Now, if the city cuts spending, we're going to see more of New York's deterioration like we have over the last year, with police having budgeting issues with sanitation as they were forced to cut their budget. But who wants to live in a place with overflowing trash and crime that is just skyrocketing through the roof because there aren't enough police to keep everyone safe? On top of that, less money means less help for needy New Yorkers, increasing homelessness. So that's what happens when the city makes cuts. The place gets worse. But the opposite happens if they go with option number 2, which is to raise taxes. Then things could stay as they are now, and the place continues to get progressively more expensive, forcing people to leave as well. And this is why it's called a doom loop, because once people start leaving, there's really no way to stop it with either of these options. And what's most frustrating frustrating about this is the city's problems are definitely the case of mismanagement, along with way too many rules for what you can and can't do with these buildings. You're at home watching and thinking to yourself, gee, how can the city have a housing crisis and an empty office crisis? Why don't they just use one of these crises to fix the other? Well, the city's trying to. And it's recently come out that more than 45 office buildings are going to become apartments. But even though that sounds like a lot of new apartments, it really isn't. And that's because the 45 offices that will become apartments, it's only going to add about 22,000 units. But the total office sector is about 5 Empire State Buildings worth of empty office space, and 45 buildings isn't making a dent in that number. And the other problem is urban planners have realized the city is short about 500,000 apartments over the next 10 years. And those aren't needed to make everyone's life better. No, the 500,000 apartment figure is just going to help the city keep pace with its own population growth, which means even if they succeed in that monumental goal, things are going to be exactly the way they are in 10 years as they are right now. And part of the problem is that even though offices might look like apartments, the process of turning them into apartments is incredibly expensive. So much so that experts think it's better to just leave places empty for the most part, as once they become apartments and people start living there, they can never go back. And the income they gain from making these conversions doesn't justify their costs right now. The other problem is that the units that come out of these office to apartment conversions, most of the time they're luxury apartments because we're in a housing crisis and these builders want to make money. And let's be real, help people who are at Target making tough choices on a weekly basis. We need affordable apartments, not luxury apartments. But believe it or not, there are some common sense ways that New York could clean itself up quickly. The only problem is that they're so practical, I don't think anybody in charge has thought of them yet.
Yorkers are feeling less positive, not very safe. The nonprofit, which interviewed 6,600 households across the city, found 30% of New Yorkers rate quality of life as excellent or good.
Okay, pretty big survey, 6,600 households, not a small sample size by any means. And people are upset with city services and safety. And here's why that's ridiculous. Look at this city budget. Only 4% of it is spent on public safety. Look at that. Now, to be honest, that seems a little low for a city of 8 million people, especially while it's going through a crime wave. Also, 31% of the budget spent on education, 26% is spent on health. And while those are important things to spend money on, if we could find a little bit of wiggle room in there to maybe hire some extra police, that would do a lot to help bring crime down because there aren't enough police. And even though city officials say crime is down, an investigation has revealed that they may actually be underreporting the amounts of crime because officers in the field aren't necessarily recording every single interaction they have and reporting it. But here's what is getting recorded.
Passengers terrified, trapped in a moving subway with nowhere to go as gunshots rang out. This chilling video, 4.5 minutes long, 4.5 minutes of fear. Passengers hiding under the seats, hugging one another, not knowing what the outcome would be.
That is absolutely terrifying. And the reason that it happened is because there aren't enough police to ride the subway cars and put a stop to these things. In fact, we don't even have the money right now to have police at every single subway station. And there's only 472 of them. That might sound like a lot, but with 1,300 more police officers hired, you could put 3 people at every subway station. But that would require finding money in the city's bloated budget. And on top of that, the current force's morale is very low. Many officers see their work basically go unrewarded because so many criminals get released and are back out on the street after getting arrested. And what that could mean is New York City is a mess, not necessarily because of lack of police, but because of progressive justice systems that don't